On the doorframe between our kitchen and living room, there is a tall, messy growth chart. It is a collection of pencil marks and dates, showing how tall my brother and I were over the years. I remember one sunny afternoon when I was 7. My father, Mark, lifted me up so I could make my own mark on the wood. He smiled, a big, warm smile that made me feel safe. "Look at that, Maya," he said. "You are growing so fast." He told me that this house was our family's anchor, a place that would always be there to measure how much we had grown. I believed him. I thought those walls were a permanent part of my life, a symbol of our family's love. I did not know that one day, my parents would decide I had grown too much, and that they would try to cut me down to size right on that very same doorframe. In our family, there were 2 sets of rules. One set was for my younger brother, Ben. The other set was for me. Ben was the golden child, the one who was full of bright ideas that never seemed to work out. My parents, Mark and Linda, saw his constant failures as signs of a creative spirit. They thought he was special. I, on the other hand, was the responsible one. I was good with numbers, I had a steady job, and I was reliable. My parents did not see this as special. They saw it as useful. The difference in how they treated us was clear in many small ways. For Ben's 21st birthday, they used their credit card to buy him a fancy new laptop for one of his business ideas. For my 21st birthday, my mother gave me a cookbook and told me it was time I learned to make a proper family dinner. When Ben lost a lot of money on a bad investment, my father told him, "That is okay, son. You have to take risks to succeed." When I asked for advice on my own savings plan for a future house, my father said, "You are so sensible, Maya. You will figure it out on your own." Their support was a river that always flowed toward Ben. I was just a well, expected to have my own water whenever they needed it. And soon, they needed it very much. After I finished college and got a good job as a project manager, I started to build my own life. I was proud of my success. My parents were proud too, but for a different reason. My father's work was unstable, and they were always worried about money. One month, my mother called me. She was crying. "Maya, darling," she said, her voice shaking. "We are a little short on the rent this month. Your father's hours were cut. Could you please help us? Just this one time. We do not want to lose our home." The thought of them losing the house with the red door, the house with our growth chart, was terrible. Of course I helped. I sent them the money they needed. "Just this one time," she had said. But it was not just one time. The next month, there was another reason. Ben needed money to fix his car so he could get to a job interview. The month after that, there was an unexpected medical bill. Slowly, just this one time, became every single month. For 7 years, I paid all or part of my parents' rent. I worked long hours. I gave up vacations. I stopped saving for my own house. I put my own dreams on hold to make sure they were safe. I did it because I loved them. I thought I was being a good daughter. During those 7 years, Ben lived a life without consequences. He drifted from one failed project to another. My parents' home was his home base. He would stay for months, eating their food and using their electricity, all while I was the one paying the bills. He treated my sacrifice like it was his personal allowance. My parents never truly thanked me. They took the money as if it was something I owed them. My success was not my own. It belonged to the family. It belonged to Ben. I was the reliable engine that kept the family car running. But I was starting to realize that I was just the engine. Ben was the one who always got to be in the driver's seat, and he was driving us all toward a cliff. The moment everything changed started with a phone call. After years of putting my own life on hold, I had finally saved up a small amount of money again. It was not enough for a house, but it was enough for a new, reliable car. My old one was falling apart, and I was proud that I could finally afford something safe. I called my parents to share the good news. My mother's voice was flat. "Oh, a new car? That is nice, dear." There was a long pause. "It is just that, well, the timing is not great. Ben has this wonderful new opportunity, a real game changer this time. He needs a little bit of money to get started. We were hoping you could help him." I felt a cold anger spread through my chest. "Mom, I have been helping for 7 years. I have been paying your rent. I need this car." "Do not be so selfish, Maya," she said, her voice turning sharp. "This is for your brother. Family helps family. That car can wait. Ben's future cannot. I did not give them the money. I bought the car." It was the first time I had ever put my own needs before their wants. The silence from them in the following weeks was heavy and full of disapproval. They were punishing me for finally choosing myself. Then, Ben decided to move back home permanently. He was almost 30 years old, with a long list of failed businesses behind him. He needed a fresh start, he said. And my parents were going to give it to him, courtesy of my bank account. The house I was paying for was now going to be his free apartment. This was a line I could not let them cross. I drove to their house, determined to have a real conversation, to make them understand how unfair this was. I found them in the living room, helping Ben unpack his things. "We need to talk," I said, my voice shaking a little. "I cannot keep paying the rent for this house if Ben is going to live here for free. It is not right." My father stood up, his face dark with anger. "This is our house, Maya. We decide who lives here. Ben is our son. He needs us." "I am your daughter," I cried out. "And I need you to see what this is doing to me. I have no savings, no future of my own, because I am spending everything to support you and him." "That is a cruel thing to say," my mother said, her eyes filling with tears. "We thought you were happy to help. Ben needs a stress-free environment to get back on his feet. Your complaining is not helping." The argument was a wall I could not break through. They saw my support as an obligation, and my feelings as an inconvenience. I left that day feeling defeated and heartbroken. I knew something had to change. I just did not know they would be the ones to change it, in the most brutal way possible. A week later, a formal letter arrived in my mailbox. The envelope was thick and looked official. I opened it with a sense of dread. Inside was a single page. At the top, in bold letters, it said, "Notice of eviction." I read the words, but my brain could not understand them. The letter stated that I, Maya, was no longer welcome at the property of 123 Elm Street. It said that I was to cease visiting the property immediately and that any attempt to enter would be considered trespassing. It was signed by my parents, Mark and Linda. They had evicted me from a house I did not even live in. I called them, my voice a strangled whisper. "I got your letter. What is this? What have you done?" My father's voice was cold, without a trace of love. "It is for the best, Maya. Ben needs to focus. He feels like you are always judging him. Your presence here is a negative influence. We need to protect him. Protect him. From me." I was sobbing now. The pain was so sharp it felt like a physical wound. "I paid your rent. I kept this roof over your heads. How can you do this to me? You made your choice when you bought that car instead of helping your brother," my mother said, her voice like ice. "We have to put Ben first now. He is our priority. We are sorry, but this is goodbye." The line went dead. They had hung up on me. They had not just kicked me out of their house, they had kicked me out of their family. For 7 years, I had been their pillar, their financial rock. But the moment I stopped being useful to them and to their precious son, they threw me away like I was nothing. They had taken my money, my time, and my love, and in return, they had given me an eviction notice. For the first few days after their betrayal, I was a ghost. I went to work, I came home to my small apartment, but I was not really there. The pain of what they had done was a constant, heavy weight in my chest. They had not just cut me off, they had tried to erase me. The daughter who had sacrificed everything for them was now a negative influence. On the 4th day, the deep sadness began to burn away, leaving something else in its place, a cold, hard anger. They thought I was just a walking wallet they could close and put away when they were done. They thought I was weak. They were about to find out how wrong they were. My first act of rebellion was simple. I did not send them the rent money. The first of the month came and went. I imagined their confusion, their panic. It gave me a small, bitter taste of satisfaction. About a week later, I received a phone call from a number I did not recognize. It was Mr. Henderson, the owner of my parents' house. He was an elderly man, probably in his 80s, with a kind voice. "Hello, Maya," he asked. "I hope I am not bothering you. It is just that the rent has not been paid this month. I tried calling your parents, but they gave me some confusing story. For the last 7 years, you have been the one I have dealt with. I wanted to make sure everything was all right." And that is when the seed of a plan began to form in my mind. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice steady, "there is something we need to talk about. Could I please meet with you in person?" We met at a small coffee shop the next day. I told him everything. I told him about the 7 years of paying rent, about my brother, about the fancy car I bought, and about the eviction notice. I showed him the letter they had sent me. As he listened, his kind face hardened with disgust. "I cannot believe it," he said, shaking his head. "To do that to their own daughter. After everything you have done for them. That is just shameful." He sighed and took a sip of his coffee. "You know, Maya," he said, looking at me with tired eyes, "I am getting too old for this. My wife passed away last year, and this house, it is a lot for me to manage. I have been thinking about selling it for a while now. I was worried some big company would buy it and just kick your parents out. But after hearing this," his words hit me like a bolt of lightning. An idea, wild and brilliant, bloomed in my mind. "Mr. Henderson," I said, leaning forward, "what if you sold it to me?" He looked surprised. "To you? But I thought you were saving up for your own place." "I was," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "And I have a little bit saved. Not enough to buy it outright, but maybe enough for a down payment. I have a good job. I have perfect credit, thanks to years of paying bills on time. Maybe the bank would give me a loan." The idea felt impossible, but also perfect. The house I had paid for all those years could actually become mine. It was the ultimate poetic justice. Mr. Henderson looked at me for a long moment. Then, he smiled. "Maya, I think that is a wonderful idea. I would be happy to sell the house to someone I know and trust. Someone responsible." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. I took my savings, the money I had set aside for my car, and the small nest egg I had managed to protect, and I went to the bank. I explained my situation. I showed them my perfect payment history, my steady income, and the rental history of the house. Because I had a solid financial record and Mr. Henderson was willing to sell at a fair price, the bank approved my mortgage. We did everything in secret. Mr. Henderson agreed to let my parents stay in the dark until the sale was final. He told them he was thinking about his options when they called to complain about a late notice. My parents, in their arrogance, assumed he was a soft old man they could easily manage. They had no idea that their world was about to be turned upside down. 2 months after my parents sent me that cruel eviction notice, I sat in a lawyer's office with Mr. Henderson. I signed a mountain of paperwork. When I was done, the lawyer handed me a set of keys and a thick folder. Inside the folder was the deed to 123 Elm Street. My name was on it. I was no longer just the daughter they had thrown away. I was now their landlord. And rent was due. I chose a Saturday afternoon to deliver the news. I wanted them all to be there. I drove my new car, the one that had started this whole chain of events, and parked right in front of the house with the red door. The house that was now mine. I was not nervous. I was calm, filled with a sense of purpose I had never felt before. I was not the scared, heartbroken girl they had dismissed. I was a property owner. I was in control. I walked up the pathway and knocked on the door. After a moment, my mother, Linda, opened it. Her face, which was smiling, instantly fell when she saw me. The smile turned into a scowl. "Maya," she said, her voice cold. "What are you doing here? We told you that you are not welcome." She tried to close the door, but I put my hand out to stop it. "I am not here to visit," I said, my voice even and strong. "I am here on business. I need to speak with you and Dad. And Ben." My father, Mark, came to the door, drawn by our voices. "You have some nerve," he grumbled. "Get off my property." "Actually," I said, pulling a document from my purse, "that is what I am here to talk about. It is not your property anymore." I handed him the paper. It was a formal notice, printed on my new letterhead, introducing myself, Maya, as the new owner and landlord of 123 Elm Street. They both stared at the paper in stunned silence. Their faces went through a series of emotions: confusion, then disbelief, then pure, horrified understanding. "What is this?" my mother whispered, her face pale. "This is some kind of joke." "It is not a joke," I said calmly. "I bought the house from Mr. Henderson. The sale was finalized yesterday. I am your new landlord." Ben came into the hallway then, a game controller in his hand. "What is all the yelling about?" he asked, annoyed. He saw me, and his face twisted into a sneer. "Oh, it is you. I thought we told you to get lost." "Ben, shut up," my father snapped, his eyes still glued to the paper in his hand. I looked at all three of them, the family who had cast me aside. "As the new owner," I began, my voice clear and businesslike, "there are going to be some changes around here. First, here is a copy of the new lease agreement." I handed them another document. "The rent will be raised to the current market rate, which is $500 more than what you were paying. It is due on the 1st of every month, with no exceptions. A late fee of $50 will be applied every day it is late." My mother started to cry. "Maya, you cannot do this to us. We are your family." "You stopped being my family when you evicted me," I said, my voice hard. "This is a business transaction now. And speaking of business," I turned my attention to Ben. "Ben, you are not on the original lease. You are an unauthorized occupant. You have two options. You can either submit a formal rental application, which will include a credit check and proof of stable income. Or, you can vacate the property within 30 days. The choice is yours." Ben's jaw dropped. He looked at me, then at our parents, expecting them to fix this. But they were powerless. The color had drained from my father's face. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. You did this just to get back at us," he stammered. "No," I said, looking him directly in the eye. "I did this because you taught me a very important lesson. You taught me that I need to look out for my own future, because no one else will. You taught me that love and family can be taken away in an instant. But a property deed? That is a lot harder to get rid of." I turned to leave, then paused at the door. "I will expect the new lease to be signed and returned to me by the end of the week. And Ben," I added, giving him a cold smile, "I look forward to receiving your rental application. I am sure it will be very impressive." I walked away from that red door, not with sadness, but with a feeling of profound liberation. I had not just bought a house. I had bought my freedom. The fallout from that Saturday afternoon was exactly as I had planned. My parents and my brother were caught in a trap of their own making, and there was no escape. Of course, Ben could not produce proof of income. He had no job, no credit, and no prospects. My parents pleaded with me to let him stay, but I held firm. "A rental application is standard procedure," I told them over the phone, my voice professional and distant. "I cannot make an exception. It would be unfair to my other tenants." I had no other tenants, but they did not need to know that. 30 days later, Ben was forced to move out. His fresh start ended with him moving into a tiny room in a shared house across town. The last I heard, he was working a part-time job at a coffee shop to pay his rent. For the first time in his life, he had to be responsible for himself. My parents could not afford the new, higher rent. They tried to argue, to plead, to guilt me. "How can you do this to your own mother and father?" My mother cried during one phone call. "I am simply following the law," I replied calmly. "The rent is set at the fair market rate. If you cannot afford it, you will have to find a place that is within your budget." After 2 months of struggling and failing to pay the full amount, they finally gave up. Their pride was shattered. They had to leave the house with the red door, the home where they had raised their children and built their lives. They moved into a small, government-subsidized apartment for seniors on the other side of town. It was clean and safe, but it was a world away from the comfortable life they had known, a life that I had paid for. Their friends, who soon heard the story of what had happened, slowly distanced themselves. The shame of being exposed as users was too much for their social circle. As for me, I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I did not move into the house. The memories, both good and bad, were too strong. It was a place of sacrifice and pain, and I needed a truly fresh start. So, I hired a contractor and had the house beautifully renovated. I painted over the growth chart on the doorframe, a final, symbolic act of letting go of the past. Then, I rented the house out to a young couple with a new baby. They were responsible and kind, and they loved the home. The income from their rent easily covered my mortgage and provided me with a new, stable source of wealth. With the money I was no longer spending on my parents, and the new income from the rental property, I was finally able to buy a home for myself. It was a beautiful, modern condo with a large balcony overlooking the city. It was not the house with the red door, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every painting on the wall, was chosen by me and paid for by me. It was a home built not on obligation, but on independence. I have not spoken to my parents or my brother since they moved out. There is nothing left to say. I learned a hard lesson. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who will hurt you the most deeply. Their love was not a gift, it was a transaction, and the moment I stopped paying, the transaction was over. I spent years paying to keep a roof over their heads, believing it was my duty as a daughter. I thought I was buying their security, but I was only buying their comfort. In the end, taking that roof away was the only way I could finally build a home for myself. A home where I am the one who is valued, the one who is safe, and the one who makes the rules.